Stuck with hundreds of half-finished tracks no matter how many hacks you try? Here's the truth. There is no one-size-fits-all formula for writing incredible music, and trying to follow one might be exactly what's holding you back from making amazing sounding music that you love. So in this video, I'm sharing 7 easy songwriting techniques I've used and taught hundreds of artists to help you discover your unique sound and easily finish your best music. Most artists struggle to write compelling songs because they overlook one critical idea. They get stuck in thinking in sections: verse, chorus, bridge, drop, when the real magic happens in the energetic shape of the music. Think about how your favorite songs don't just jump from one section to another. They build and release energy, pulling you along emotionally. So for example, think of how Bohemian Rhapsody takes the listeners on a journey. It isn't memorable because of a verse-chorus structure. It doesn't even have one. It's unforgettable because it clearly shapes tension and release. When you design that energy first, you stay focused on what actually matters to take the listener somewhere. And then you structure your music in a way that makes people feel something deep. So now let's go ahead and make this practical. Here's exactly how to sketch your song's energetic shape in 3 simple steps. So instead of copying a traditional song structure, I use what I call the sine wave song structure. It's a modular framework that helps you map the tension and release of your piece over time, the real core of an impactful experience. So here's a visual of the framework that I use when I'm composing songs. But the key principle is this, that great compositions tell a musical story through the ebb and flow of tension and release. And by using a framework like this, it keeps you focused on what's most important, which is creating tension and release to create an impactful song instead of arbitrary structures or forcing parts. The thing about this framework is that it's modular. You don't need to have 4 sections and 12 subsections. You can make this fit to whatever you want. Inside a song, generally, you're going to be building up towards some sort of climax, some sort of peak of energy, right? So the main payoff of your piece of music. And from there, oftentimes it will dissolve, and then we will develop an idea up until maybe a second point in the song where there's a big peak. And again, oftentimes this could be the chorus, that's fine, but it doesn't really matter what you label the sections. What matters is the energetic peak of the song, right? And how we get to and how we dissolve away from those things. In these sections, section 1, section 2, section 3, section 4, the key is that in these subdivisions, section 1, 2, 3, these little slices, we're focused on these principles. So that on numbers like 1, 4, 7, and 10, the energy is that something is entering, something is leading, something is primary, something is capturing our interest, the narrative is progressing, foreseeing changes, going against expectation, confirming expectation, introducing a new idea, all that kind of stuff. And then in 2, 5, 8, and 11, something that's more continuing, progressing, or developing. So again, once you've introduced a new idea, a new motif, a new vibe, most likely you're going to want to develop on that vibe and add to the conversation, introduce new supplementary ideas or cool musical parts that complement what's happening. And then in sections 3, 6, 9, and 12, it could be something that's more transforming or dissolving or creating tension, pulling the ear that something is about to happen. And when you focus on this intentionally, it helps you structure your music in a way that's impactful like this. So step 1 is to sketch the energy curve of your song. You start by sketching out the energy curve of your song, then you build your sections around that wave. The key is that you're not plugging into a cookie cutter template, but creating your own framework based on the context of the music and how you want the listener to feel. So modify this framework as needed. This gives you total creative freedom, but enough structure to keep your decisions clear and intentional. Because tension and release isn't just abstract. It's built from contrast, expectation, and the types of sounds that you introduce. So use this to get some clarity. Where does the song climax? Where does it build? Where does it feel calm? Where does it resolve? Where are the big moments in the song? Step 2, give each section a clear role. Don't worry if you don't have all the parts yet, just imagine what you'd like your song to do energetically. This then becomes your blueprint as you continue to write. Each section in your song will either lead, develop, or transition energy. Lead introduces new ideas, motifs, or themes. Develop builds and progresses on existing ideas. And transition smoothly connects sections and prepares the listener for change. This is the secret to keeping the listener engaged for your whole song. Step 3, use contrast and expectation to build tension. You see, tension and release are created by setting up an expectation and then showing a purple elephant. Then you can either deliver or subvert those expectations. This can be done melodically, rhythmically, harmonically. There's infinite ways that you can achieve this. It can be simple, like repeating a phrase 3 times and then changing it on the 4th, or setting up harmonic limitations to expand into something fresh, like only using a pentatonic scale for certain sections of your piece, then introducing more colorful tones later for more impact and contrast. And speaking of contrast, that is another way to create tension and release by contrasting opposites. So things like loud and soft, dense and sparse, rhythmically tight or loose to increase the perception of certain elements. So for example, if you want something to sound far away, you don't only need to add reverb to that sound, you can make everything else sound closer. And we're going to break it down into the subdivisions, right? So maybe we go with the 4 sections, and then in each of these sections, maybe there's a few slices. So at this point, maybe that first chord progression, this guy, right? Maybe that's something that we start with, right? Being that part where it's like, okay, chords, that's entering. Okay, this is a new bedrock, right? We're starting the song. Now, if I think of 2, it's like, okay, how can we develop from this idea? So maybe we think of developing the rhythm. So instead of just playing these chords like this, maybe we start off the tune like that, but maybe we move into playing it note by note. Maybe we add another chord. Right? I like that. That's 2. It's like, okay, now we're playing the chords with a rhythmic focus, right? And again, you could probably write this down. And then that other section, these chords. That's a really cool section. And to me, this could either be what you would commonly look at a chorus or a bridge. So maybe we want that to be a peak of our song, right? So maybe over here, when we're thinking of our peak, I'm thinking section 4, I'm thinking those chords are coming in, right? Because it feels like a new section, feels like a peak. So you can start to see the power of this is like, okay, before I get to 4, probably want to find something for this section 3 where we're introducing tension, setting up expectation for this part, for this to really land home. Right? And you can continue laying this out if you have more parts, more sections, or you could keep it simple and just keep it to this first section, whatever you choose. But the key is that you're focused on building this tension and release. All right, so I had a little bit of a play around with these parts and developed them a little bit farther, but filled out my song map here. And it's not complete, but it's helping me get an idea of what the shape of the song could be, and being very intentional about how to create tension and release, right? So we got these chords to start off, then right away we introduce a new element, which is the 5/8 rhythm, and then we build a melody on top of that, so that's developing. Then I introduce this tension kind of chord progression that quickly falls back into the 5/8 that we're familiar with, and including now a backbeat. So that's the first time that we have drums come in, and then bass tags along on the end of that phrase into 5, which is the full vibe. And then I need to build something to transition into the new chords, which was my second part. And then I'm like, maybe an arpeggio at the end to develop it. Still unsure on the tail end of this. But at this point, even if you just have a few things, we can look at building a song map. Shaping the energy curve is only half the battle, because once you know how your song should feel, you still need to figure out what actually happens in each section. That's where most people get stuck, staring at a blank timeline with a vibe in mind, but no idea how to start. So next, I'll show you a simple method to create the core sections and bring your song to life, so writing becomes easier and way faster. By the way, if you want a structured process to help you track and implement all of these insights directly into your music, I've created a Notion template for my entire production simple with action items for each stage that you can download for free. The link is in the description below. Many artists dive straight into writing without a clear plan. Then they quickly get overwhelmed, stuck, or lost in endless possibilities. Without a clear roadmap, songwriting becomes unnecessarily difficult, and the energy curve that you've already outlined can get lost. But here's how the pros do it differently. Film composers like Hans Zimmer or pop producers like Max Martin don't leave structure to chance. While they stay open to creative discovery for sure, they often map out a flow and function for each section early on, ensuring that every part has a purpose before diving too deep into details. This simple song map gives you clarity, direction, confidence instead of drowning in options. You brainstorm a clear palette of instruments and sounds that support your energy curve. Plus, your brain loves structure to work from as it reduces overwhelm. It also speeds up decision making, and the whole process becomes so much faster, easier, and more intuitive. So here's exactly how to create your own song map in just a few minutes. Step 1, draw your song map. Grab a piece of paper or your favorite digital whiteboard and take each section from the last step and turn them into columns. Then draw the level of energy, like low, medium, or high, for each section. Step 2, outline your elements. So quickly jot down 1 to 4 key elements or instruments you'll use. So for example, ambient pad, vocal chops, synth bass line, etc. Don't overthink this. Even rough placeholders work. The point is direction, not perfection. Step 3, briefly note how you'll use those elements to create dynamics. So for example, quiet vocal in the verse, loud in the chorus, sparse percussion in the intro, full rhythm in drop, synth chords being ambient and legato in the intro, and rhythmic and staccato in the build. And if you're doing this and you're feeling stuck, just pick one of your favorite songs and reverse engineer its map. Identify the sections, energy levels, and key elements, and you'll immediately see how they create tension and release and see exactly how they built it. But don't forget to make it your own. All right, so we're going to build a song map based on what we've got using the sine wave framework that we've outlined. So if I go into Ableton here and show you a little bit of what I got, it will give you some more context on how we can build this map. So we're starting off with this 3/4 introduction of these chords. Just introducing the vibe. Then we go into a 5/8 motif, following the same chords, but adding a chord on the tail end. Right, so this is leading, this is primary, right? Introduction, leading. Then I have a melody. Moving it along. Then I wanted to introduce some tension. So I have these new chords with a 4 backbeat underneath the 5/8. Right? And I want this to be very quick to introduce tension before we now bring in a backbeat and the bass. So you can see this as the first peak, right? Then moving forward, we add some more drums, bring back that melody. Right, then I think we could develop the melody here, and then I have these other chords at the end. Back into 3/4. With that stagger beat, I had that in my head, right? So now we got all these elements, but before trying to strain my head about where is this going, how are we going to fill in the next parts, we're going to create a song map together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plot these sections in a different way. But the key here is that we want to draw out the energy curve of this song, right? Because we played with tension and release, but now we have to focus on dynamics and then just arbitrarily think up what we could do to increase that dynamics or create that dynamics. So let me show you what I mean. So section 1 is just these chords. right? It's just these nice, beautiful chords introducing the harmony. So I'm gonna go ahead and draw a line to separate 1 and 2 here. And I'm gonna use red to indicate the energy level. So this is pretty low. I'm gonna put this way down here, okay? Because it's just chords, right? It's a cool timing, but that's where the energy level is. Then if I move on, we'll go back to white here, draw a line here to separate 2 and 3. What's next? We have the 5/8. So now we have a little bit more of a complex rhythm, right? We're not as floaty. There's some momentum, and I might add some percussion. And here's where the ideation can come in. It's like, okay, let's say we want the energy to jump up, but not quite a bit, but build up, right? So maybe we want it here. And this is where maybe on paper you'll have more room, but I'll go back to white. Here it's just chords, right? Here it's motif, and then maybe we want percussion to emphasize that 5/8 pattern, right? So if I play it here, 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3, right? Maybe we want a shaker to maybe help us build that up and make that obvious. Then if we go to the next section, we bring in the melody. So what do we want to do here, right? Now it's forcing me to think of like, okay, maybe we want to increase the energy here quite a bit before falling down into that transition section, right? So I'll draw another line here. Okay, I'm going to grab this red, and maybe we want it to just build up again, like nothing crazy, but definitely more energy. So now it's forcing me to think of like, okay, in this section, when the melody comes in, it doesn't feel like super much more energy with that melody, right? So maybe we need to introduce some bass element. Maybe we need to introduce like a backbeat. But again, I want to be careful because if we continue on, so this is a question mark. How are we going to do this, right? Then if I continue on, right, this is our transition, which is going to be a really trippy. That's it, like that quick. So I would say the energy falls down here, ideally. So I need to build the energy. So maybe it's like slightly higher than 2, but it's definitely less than 3. So I need to figure something out for section 3 to increase the energy. Then we're falling down to that transition, and coming out of that transition, right? This feels like we've arrived somewhere, definitely, right? So I would say the energy is higher. So basically if 5 comes in and we have the first backbeat of the song and the first time we hear bass come in, that's very impactful. And I did that on purpose. It's like, okay, I'm not bringing in bass or drums until here, right? And if you do this on paper, you'll have more room, or you could split it up into 6 and 12, 2 different pages. But here's the idea is that, okay, it's forcing you to think through being intentional about what you're doing in your song. So as you can see, this is the kind of arc that I'm projecting, creating with my songs. And now you can think through, like, what are we going to do to make that happen? It's like, okay, yeah, the drums, the backbeat of the drums and bass only come in on 5, like on this section 5 here. So just that alone is going to increase a ton of energy and really bring that part out, right? And then so on and so forth. It's like, okay, well, maybe we want that peak to fall down again, dynamic wise, right? So let's draw a line here. Maybe we want the energy here, and maybe we want to build this up, right? So like this is kind of a staircase thing, but maybe I want to bring the energy way up here, like, and have the first climax be the climax, right? So let me erase this. And then so if that's the case, when we get to this section of the song, right? I need to make that feel as huge as possible. So how could I do that? In many ways. I could add more harmonies in the back. I could add some counter rhythms. I could add more layers. I could saturate the bass. We can bring in counter melody. There's a lot of stuff you can do to make it feel bigger. But this is the key, is that I'm thinking through the energy of this tune, right? Where it's going like this, right? And then we're probably going to fall way down before that second peak, which will end us up over here, right? So now you're really creating a journey for the listener. But remember, a clear map alone doesn't always guarantee a powerful song. To truly resonate, your music needs emotional depth. Next, I'll show you a method to reliably add meaning and soul into your song structure. Have you ever heard a song that sounds technically good, but somehow still feels empty? It's catchy, polished, yet forgettable. Why? Because it lacks emotional depth. In other words, it lacks a convincing story. Think about watching a movie that's just random scenes stitched together versus one with a clear storyline. Which one stays with you? Well, the difference is narrative, the contextual journey that gives meaning to each moment. Your music needs a narrative too, even if it has no lyrics. So how do you do this easily? You give yourself a storytelling prompt. One proven way to do this is by borrowing the timeless structure of the hero's journey, the powerful storytelling framework behind myths, novels, movies like Star Wars, Harry Potter, The Matrix, etc. The hero's journey has clear emotional stages, such as call to adventure, the moment the hero leaves their comfort zone, crossing the threshold, when they enter an unfamiliar and challenging world, approach the innermost cave, facing their deepest fears before their greatest obstacle. Or to keep it even simpler, just think departure, initiation, and return. The hero leaves home, faces trials, and then returns transformed. Here's exactly how you can use this type of storytelling framework to bring emotional depth into your music. So step one is to choose one or two stages of the hero's journey. Even picking one stage like crossing the threshold can instantly give your music emotional clarity. Combining two stages together creates strong contrasts, perfect for building tension and release. Step two is to ask yourself, what emotions does this moment evoke? So imagine the chapter that you've selected vividly. Does it feel exciting, tense, hopeful, mysterious? Visualize it like the scene of a movie playing in your head. Then step three, use this emotional image as your writing prompt. Translate that feeling into musical choices. If it's tense, maybe use sparse percussion and dissonant, unpredictable chords. If it's hopeful, maybe use bright sounds or borrow like the major third from a parallel minor key. If you get stuck here, just think of a powerful movie scene and try scoring it musically. This exercise will give you even more specific emotional cues. All right, next let's talk about the hero's journey, which is a super cool framework to help inject narrative and emotion and meaning into your music. Each of these stages individually, or any combination of two or three, are excellent prompts to help your creativity channel something that's a little bit more meaningful, that tells a story, right? So for example, a very common one would be the ordinary world, where the hero or the person in question is in their normal everyday life, and then they get called to adventure. Something happens in their life to move them out of the normal situation that they're in and forces them into a new journey. So after reading through these, the ones that I think I'm going to go for this tune is meeting the mentor and crossing the threshold. So these two. Okay, so for me, like the beginning part of this song, like the introduction of these chords, right? That's like a very, who knows, maybe you're meeting someone new that's like, wow, this person's super amazing, and they're here to teach you. Maybe the 5/8 is an indicator of that, a way to expand your mind around time. The tail end, when I start going into this chord progression, it's a little bit more mysterious. I could see that as crossing the threshold. Okay, like now we're pushing through the limitations of perception of the hero, right? So we've got to go somewhere else now with what we've learned. So that to me makes it meaningful. And I'm going to use that as a way to help me flesh out that tail part of the second half of the song. So if I were to draw that out, right? Boom, boom. So this is like the first half of my song and the second half of the song. And it would be worth thinking about, what does that mean emotionally to you? So for me, mentor is like exciting, like new, exciting person, right? Usually it's like knowledge, new way of seeing the world, right? All right, this is what comes up for me. Like when I think of a mentor, it's like pushes you, challenges you. This resonated with me. A lot of these themes where, okay, new exciting chords. That's how we start off the song. The null, it's like we have this like 5/8 stuff, like we're expanding our perception around this. I have this weird polyrhythm coming up. So this is challenging to the listener, right? This is like, yo, this is not like a normal track. Cool. So to me, this makes sense. And I could continue to use this emotional thread to develop those ideas farther. But then the threshold, which is the second section, right? What does that mean? Crossing the threshold is now cool. Like, you've been shown all this stuff, but let's put this to the test. You need to push beyond what you think you're capable of. For me personally, in my journey, like, jamming over chord changes is a newer thing. Like, I'm somewhat familiar with it, but it's definitely not super, super comfortable. So that would push me out of the threshold, which gives this meaning. But in general, right, using your knowledge in a cool way, like, maybe we have to play around with the themes that were here, like whether it's the 5/8 thing earlier, or right, like that weird polyrhythm, which was like a 4/5, right? Or maybe we got to use the odd chords in the transition. So what I mean by that is like those weird chords that I play, right, for that little transition section. Maybe while we're jamming over this chord progression, maybe I have to try to have signals of those chords in there, well, as I'm jamming, and outline those things, right? Which will make these sections feel connected even more. So here's just some ideas of how I'm thinking this through and how I could go about applying this in this tune. All right, so if I take those ideas we were just talking about and try to jam with the piano over this groove, right? I'm gonna try and incorporate those elements I was talking about. So let's just outline what's going on. We got this common tone, C over everything. Right? Trying to outline some changes. Maybe at the end we use those tags. Right? And try to see if we can fit in this theme of those chords as part of our jam as we're outlining these changes. Right? So I'm already getting those ideas that where over the last two chords of this progression, which are, right? Maybe over this chord, we can play. And then over this chord, we can play, right? That already sounds really interesting to me. So again, just having these little micro narrative things in your head as you're exploring can help you come up with really cool ideation. But even with a powerful narrative, you might still doubt yourself. You write, rewrite, tweak, and eventually question every decision. If you're not careful, this perfectionism can stop you dead in your tracks. So next, I'll show you how to overcome perfectionism forever. So most artists sabotage their creative flow by trying to write and edit at the same time. They waste hours tweaking tiny details before the song even has shape. This is exactly why people spin their wheels and why so many songs never get finished. So imagine carving a marble sculpture. If you immediately start chiseling away tiny details before you have the general shape, you'll quickly get overwhelmed, lose perspective, and waste hours backtracking your progress. Music is exactly the same. First, you need the rough outline. Then you can refine. Your brain literally can't brainstorm and edit at the same time. They are separate tasks and activate different neural networks, so keep them separate. Here's exactly how to keep your creativity flowing and avoid perfectionism. So step 1, set a timer for 30 minutes and quickly draft out your entire song. If you need to set it for another 30 minutes, go ahead, but finish the song sketch first, and treat your first version like a rough sketch. Focus on writing broad strokes of the entire song instead of perfecting the first 8 bars. Step 2, use placeholders if you get stuck. If you don't have the perfect melody, sound, or lyric, just put something rough down and move on. You just need a general idea. Step 3, don't judge your ideas yet. The only goal is to get a beginning, middle, and end. Refinement comes later. If you find yourself tempted to edit, remind yourself, I'm building the marble right now. I can chisel away later. All right, next we're going to talk about creating a rough composition first before worrying about the details. So when you got something that looks like this, you got a bunch of clips, you got some sections filled out, but not the whole arrangement. Let's move into a rough draft as quick as possible, then worry about the details later. In Ableton here, I got these scenes arranged in some sort of structure. Is it perfect? No. Does it have a general shape, general story, general narrative? Absolutely. So what I'm going to be doing right away is just as quickly as possible trying to get a rough draft of what this piece could look like, right? So I could easily just grab this scene, move it over here, and then start building out an arrangement based on my scenes. And if I run into a place where I'm not sure what's coming next, I'm just going to use a placeholder. So I spent a few minutes moving my scenes over here to the timeline, just really quickly, without too much thought about the details or the fine-tuned structure. And just by creating the constraints of going quickly and trying to get an end result very fast, a lot of ideas came up, and I'm actually pretty satisfied with this as a rough arrangement. But instead of worrying about all the details and if all the timings are right, or if this part is long enough, or if it's too long, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I'm just aiming to create the marble first and then refine it and sculpt away the details, add in more elements, et cetera, later. I can't emphasize this enough. It's much easier for your brain to make creative decisions based on something that exists, even if it's really bad, than a blank timeline. But what if your rough sketch still feels weak or uninspired? Don't worry. Next, I'll show you a bulletproof method to ensure you never struggle to find great ideas again. Most artists struggle to finish songs because they waste precious time and creative energy working on mediocre ideas. Imagine spending weeks or months on a song that was never going to be great in the first place. It's exhausting, frustrating, and demotivating. So how can you make sure that you're only pouring effort into your absolute strongest ideas? There's a powerful concept called the 80-20 principle that reveals a fundamental truth found in nature, economics, and creativity. 20% of your effort produces 80% of your results. In music, this means that only about 20% of your ideas will truly be great. The rest are just stepping stones. One of my students used to spend weeks trying to force every loop into a finished track. He was exhausted, discouraged, and creatively burnt out. But once he started setting a goal of quickly sketching 10 ideas per week, he immediately saw results, finishing 2 or 3 songs every single month. Why? Because he stopped wasting energy on weak ideas, and everything in the production process is easier when you're working with exceptional material. So here's exactly how to use the 80-20 principle to easily identify and develop your strongest musical ideas. Step 1 is set a weekly idea quota. So for example, 10 ideas each week. Short loops, melodies, chord progressions, full song ideas, anything counts. Step 2, focus purely on quantity. This will feel counterintuitive. Don't worry if most ideas aren't great. That's exactly the point. You're mining for gold, and most of what you dig up will be dirt. And step 3, at the end of the week, pick your top 1 or 2 strongest ideas. These become your starting points for creating rough compositions. And if you're stuck here, remind yourself, the more ideas I create, the better my chances are of discovering something truly special. Allow yourself the space to explore, experiment, and freely create. Something beautiful will emerge. So I want to show you what I mean when I talk about playing the volume game. So this is my Notion template that I use to track all of my ideas and my projects. Again, if you're interested in grabbing this, link is in the description below. But I want to show you what I mean by volume. So in this case, in my extract stage of the system, I've got maybe some 20 odd ideas here, which are all ideas that was curated from an even larger quantity. So this is probably the 20-30% of ideas that I actually thought had something remarkable or were special amongst an even larger amount. And if I go into my vault, all of my other ideas, again, this is a massive curation of an even larger. So this is the top 20% of a 100% total body of ideas, just to have a ton of curation happening so that whenever I'm working on something, I have all of these starting points of ideas that are very strong. And to show you another way to look at this, I did a challenge quite a while ago where I attempted to make as much music as I could. So I jammed 3 jams a day. That was my only target. No care about quality. And I want you to notice the distribution curve of all of these files when there's no circle beside it. It's kind of not interesting, not that great. If there's a red circle, it's okay, but would need a lot of work to become something remarkable. When there's a red and green label, this is pretty good and could be a potential idea. This may make it inside a card of my system. And if it has all 3, this is almost a full song that emerged through just a flow session where I was not even concerned about quality at all. And I just want you to notice how uneven the distribution is. In this first chunk from here to here, there's only 1 that was a full complete song that got jammed out, which is pretty rare. But then in the second chunk, you can see that there was 3 or almost 4 in a row. But generating great ideas is only half the battle. The real magic happens when you learn how to develop these strong ideas into cohesive musical arrangements. Once you master this skill, songs practically write themselves. Have you ever had a killer loop or riff, but no idea how to turn it into a full song? Most artists hit a creative wall because they lack a reliable way to develop ideas. They end up stuck, frustrated, or guessing their way through the songwriting process. So think of your strong musical idea as a structure of Lego bricks. If you wanted to build something amazing from it, you wouldn't try to go find the most unique Lego bricks and gather like all the tiny custom pieces from all these different kind of Lego sets. What would you do? You would look at the structure of what you've already built and find patterns in how the bricks are already connected. So instead of desperately searching for new parts and new sounds and new ideas to add to your piece that might end up feeling disconnected, first closely look at the ideas you already have. What are the smaller pieces that you can break it into? What patterns can you see? How can you rearrange those pieces into new shapes? And suddenly you'll have fresh ideas that still feel connected to the original. I call this using the musical DNA, the core rhythm, melody, motif, or harmony of an idea to effortlessly create variations, expansions, and callbacks. So here's exactly how to use your musical DNA of an idea to effortlessly develop your ideas into full cohesive songs. So step 1 is to pick out the core DNA from one of your loops or riffs. This could be a beat, melody, chord progression, or bass line, something memorable and distinct that you've already identified as being strong. Step 2 is to quickly create 5 variations from that DNA. Try simplifying, repeating, reharmonizing, which is changing the chords underneath, reversing, restructuring, shortening, lengthening, etc. Step 3, use these variations as the building blocks to easily create new song sections. Your ideas will feel fresh, cohesive, and naturally connected by their shared DNA. And if you feel stuck here, remember that volume still applies. Okay? Not all the variations you make will be good. Just keep creating. How else can I twist and reshape this musical idea? Keep making small changes and you'll eventually have a new idea that's connected to the original and that is badass. So keep making small changes and you'll eventually come across a new idea that feels connected to the original, but could be a new section for your piece. And just trust your intuition here. If an idea comes to mind as you're creating variations and experimenting, follow that intuition. And more times than not, you'll stumble across something pretty amazing. And think of it this way, variation number 7 might be the amazing perfect fit that you need, but you can't get to variation number 7 without variations 1 through 6. But even if you master idea development, there's still one hidden trap that quietly sabotages your momentum, one that artists never even notice until it's too late. Let me show you exactly how to avoid it. Have you ever worked on a song so long that you've completely lost the plot on what to try with it? You've tried so many things, you don't really know where it's going, and you're just scratching your head. One day you love it, the next day you hate it, and eventually you can't even tell what's good or bad anymore. This lack of objectivity is exactly why so many artists get stuck. Imagine your favorite song right now. Now imagine listening to it 10, 50, even 100 times in a row. By the 100th listen, you'll probably be sick of it, no matter how great the song is. Yet this is exactly what we do with our own music, losing all sense of what's working or not. And here's the crazy thing. When this happens, nothing actually changed in the music, only your perspective changed. Your ears then become unreliable, and you lose your ability to make good creative decisions. So what's the solution? Work on multiple songs at once. Cycling between them will help you maintain fresh ears and clear judgment. You'll become less precious over your work, you'll rediscover your own ideas, and most importantly, you'll make much better decisions. Let's talk about the cheat code to help you stay objective on your own work, especially when you're doing everything. And this is to cycle between songs instead of hyper-focusing on one idea, putting all your eggs in one basket, and obsessing over one piece of music. It's much healthier and better for your brain to cycle between many things. So for example, in the compose stage of the system, I have 13 songs that I think are going to become an album that I can cycle between as I'm working on them, right? So let's say we're working on Living Light over here, right? And maybe the session doesn't go too well, starting to overthink it, my ideas didn't work out. Instead of continuing to bang my head against that wall, maybe we put it on the shelf for now and we cycle to number 2 and so on and so forth. Maybe this one goes great. Maybe it doesn't. That's fine. Put it at the bottom, continue, and cycling through either whatever you feel most excited to work on or just systematically go through it, because by the time we get back to number 1, it will be fresh in my mind. I will not have heard it a zillion times, and I'll have worked on all these other things which may have unlocked connections subconsciously for that song. And the same goes for different stages of the system. So if you're composing and you're kind of sick of the whole compose thing right now, maybe you go into some more ideation and you flow out some more ideas. Or maybe you look at some ideas that you've already identified as being very good and start fleshing them out. Here's exactly how you can easily maintain your objectivity and avoid creative burnout. Step 1, keep at least 3 songs in rotation, ideally at different stages. So for example, one idea as a sketch, one idea in arrangement, and one that's nearly finished. Step 2, whenever you feel stuck, bored, or frustrated with a song, instead of forcing it, simply switch to another. Coming back to it with fresh ears might actually help you solve problems faster. And fun fact, your subconscious mind is still working on music that you're not actively working on. And step 3, return to each song later with a clear goal and renewed perspective. With more objectivity, you'll instantly hear what's working and what's not. But you have to allow yourself to listen intentionally before you do another session on a track. Then, before you do your session, make a game plan before you dive in. You want to take advantage of this fresh perspective and what comes to mind intuitively as you're listening back. Make a list of what comes up and then go into your DAW with that game plan. Now, all of these techniques are super powerful, but they only work if you actually use them. If you want a clear step-by-step system to capture, organize, and finish your best ideas consistently, then watch this video right now. I'll show you exactly how to take your ideas from start all the way to the finish line, effortlessly staying in flow the entire time, leveraging everything we've covered here so far. So I'll see you in that video.